Today, I'd like to talk to you about organizational ethics. So, ethics is not just something that's personal, it's not just about the individual level. As we've talked about previously, there are several different levels of analysis in ethics, and one up from the individual level is the meso level or organizational ethics. And in public administration, organizational ethics are particularly important because organizations have to figure out how to run uh, in an ethical way, and they have to create a culture to do so. Because as we've covered, also, um, when you have a culture where cheating becomes acceptable, then if you're in the in group or if you're part of an organization, then the people within that organization start to believe that this level of unethical uh, behavior is actually okay because their coworkers are doing it because there's this organizational culture that suggests that it's okay. So so how do you get to moral management? Well, there's three different types of organizational strategies. There's immoral management. This is a type of management where um, the managers are not focused on ethical standards at all. Laws are something that need to be gamed and worked around, and the focus is on success at any cost. So there's no regard for ethical standards and obeying the law and acting in the right way. Immoral management is strictly focused on the success of the organization at any cost. Um, Amoral management is management that's neither moral nor is it immoral. It's indifferent to ethical standards. So, amoral management is kind of a well intentioned selfishness. So, the organization is only worried about their own success, but they don't want to break any laws. So, the moral standard becomes what can we do legally? Well, we're not going to break the law, but what can we do? What can we do for success legally? And so there's no restrictions on what the organization, what the players within the organization can do if they want to be. If the individuals want to use their own ethical standards to make their decisions, then that's fine with the organization. But the organization only concerns itself with doing what's legal, and we know that just because something's legal doesn't make it ethically right. So that's amoral management. And then there's moral management, a management style that does focus on building the ethical standards of the organization and focuses on creating a culture that cares about due process and fairness and justice. And so um, it's not just about obedience to the law, but to a true moral standard. And the focus of any organization is on success of the organization. Of course, they want to succeed, but the only within the um, the confines, only within the confines of uh, ethics and principles and legality. So uh, so those are three different types of strategies for management. And so we'll talk a little bit about how do organizations go about creating a culture, an organizational culture that cares about ethical standards. A lot of them do this through codes. So you have ethics codes. How do you create some kind of code that people are supposed to live by? This is our um, this is our guiding. These are our guiding principles. So it's kind of related to when organizations have a mission statement. They have a mission statement. These are our goals as an organization, and then when they have um, ethics codes with that. This is how we're going to conduct ourselves to reach these goals. So a lot of organizations have ethics standards. As a student, you have a student code of conduct, which is kind of along the same lines as an ethics code. Here are the things that you're expected to do. Here's what's accepted behavior, and here's what's not accepted behavior. Workplaces have ethics codes to try and make sure that everybody within the workplace is acting with integrity. So police officers go through ethics training, and they have a code of ethics. There's a code of ethics in the military. Other organizations, of course, have codes of ethics that are guiding principles to try and make sure that you're creating a culture where certain behavior is unacceptable and certain behavior is acceptable. So one of those codes of ethics is the APSA, the American Society, ASPA, the ASPA Code of Ethics, which is the American Society of Public Administration. And this is a code of ethics that's very broad. It's very broad because it's supposed to be able to be implemented with any public service job. So the police, the firefighters, city management, public schools, any public administrators working anywhere in public administration should be able to follow these principles. So one of the weaknesses is that it's a little broad and that it's hard to make it specifically relevant to certain jobs because many public administrators do things on the day-to-day basis that other public administrators don't. So just to review some of the ASPA Code of Ethics, we have advance the public interest, uphold the Constitution and law, promote democratic participation, strengthen social equity, fully inform and advise, demonstrate personal integrity, promote ethical organizations, and advance professional excellence. And there's a number of practices that are under each of these principles that are supposed to help guide public administrators to making ethical decisions. Now, some of them are kind of vague, so the practices help take away some of that gray area, but things like promote ethical organizations, not exactly a nice specific guide for telling me what I should do as a public administrator. Promote democratic participation. That makes a lot of sense in public admin. You want to promote civic engagement, and you want to promote the public's participation in the process. But at the same time, what does that look like? So there are issues with the ASPA Code of Ethics, but there are also some really good things about it, and so that's what we're covering this week is what are those codes? What is organizational management, and how are ethics involved? How do you create a culture in a workplace that will allow for ethical organizational decision making? And if you know anything about the cases like the Atlanta cheating scandal, you can see where organizations can mess this up. That if you have ethical codes that aren't enforced and no one's taking them seriously, and you set up the wrong kind of motivations for school management, then you can end up with a very large cheating scandal where people are viewing it as acceptable to participate because other people in the organization are also participating, and they've been set up with these incentives that are poor incentives. And so you'll see where the things we cover this week in organizational ethics and these codes and the types of management play a role in helping explain different cases where the ethics standards of organizations have